if nothing changes, close to 1 billion people will die this century as a direct result of tobacco-related illnesses. Now, that's 10 times more than the number of people who died from the exact same causes in the last century. Over 80% of those particular deaths are likely to happen in low and middle-income countries, pretty much like where we are right now, right across Africa. Now, it would be easy enough to simply typecast this as a case of profit over life and so on and so forth. But the truth is actually a lot more nuanced than that. We'll be exploring the business of tobacco tonight, right here on Global Business Africa, and of course the health argument and the economics arguments around it in the next half hour. But that's not the only thing on the agenda. Here's what's coming up. Liberia's efforts to revive tourism after being declared Ebola-free are also in focus. And we'll be asking how one can stay profitable in the toughest of times. We'll be taking lessons from South Africa's Ostrich capital. Now, global efforts to stamp out the world's illicit tobacco trade have been stepped up as part of the World No Tobacco Day on the 31st of May. The United Nations and its subsidiary, the World Health Organization, are collectively urging the member states to sign the protocol to eliminate the illicit trade in tobacco products. Now, that's a code that offers a legal instrument to counter criminal activity and replenish government revenues in order to let states spend a lot more on healthcare, which they will eventually need to. The WHO says 80% of the world's 1 billion smokers right now live in low and middle-income countries where the burden of tobacco-related illness and death is heaviest. The UN agency says smoking may cause 1 billion deaths in the 21st century if current trends continue and urgent action is not taken at all. Now, let's bring that down to one specific country's example. Despite the Egyptian government's efforts to reduce smoking in general, the nation remains the largest single tobacco market in the Arab world. By some estimates, nearly a quarter of Egypt's 90 million people smoke, and that's one of the highest rates in the world. As Yasser Kim reports, neither price hikes nor public smoking bans have had any effect on cutting or curbing smoking rates.
Smoking has always been a source of headache to the government. 30% of the population are smokers, and 50% of the 90 million Egyptians are exposed to second-hand smoking, far exceeding the international levels. The consequences of smoking on the health have had its toll.
Lung cancers, although there is another type of cancer that's related to smoking, like bladder cancer or tracheal cancer, or respiratory tract cancer, but the most common now is cardiovascular risk factors or cardiovascular diseases like MI or myocardial infarction, or what we call death from an area from the heart due to a blockage in an artery which is supplying the heart. Chest diseases related to smoking, what we call COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases from smoking, what we call respiratory failure sometime at the end, or what we call cardiovascular diseases. And this is the big era of diseases. This is starting to be the most common cause of death worldwide.
The government banned cigarette ads on TV and billboards. It prohibited smoking in some places such as airports. It went as far as placing a picture of a sick man or damaged lungs on the cigarette packs as a striking warning to users. These efforts have not deterred Egyptians from smoking.
Sales are the same, nothing changed. Even when they place the pictures on the cigarette packs, people are still buying cigarettes.
What made matters worse is the quick rise of the shisha smoking as well. Many Egyptians believe it's not as harmful as smoking.
They think in Egypt that shisha is okay because it's not like smoking, which we are always talking about, smoking. But shisha had the same effect, maybe more harmful effects than smoking. And it's related to like social habits in Egypt, more than anything else.
Knowing there is no stopping the powers of the smoke, the government opted to increase its price. It raised taxes on cigarettes by over 60% in the last 2 years.
We still smoke even with higher prices because of the pressures we live in. I have loads of economic problems and the cigarettes calm me down. It's the only way to release the tensions.
In spite of the awareness campaign in Egypt, it's a losing battle against the cigarette. According to the WHO, the number of smokers have increased twice as fast as the population in the last 20 years, making it the largest market in the Arab region and a top 10 consumer in the world. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Let's expand this conversation and reel in Kelsey Hubbard. She's live in New York, and Adele Makhrouki is also live in Cairo right now. Kelsey, let's start with you. Beyond laws banning tobacco advertising and then warning users of potential effects and higher taxes, I mean, what really can governments do beyond that to limit tobacco consumption?
Well, it's true regulating human behavior is a tricky business. While there are many statewide smoking bans here across America, the United States Congress has not attempted to enact any nationwide federal smoking ban. So any bans are a product of state and local health laws. Now, public health scholars believe that public policy interventions continue to be the key method to reduce tobacco use. For example, increasing the financial cost of using tobacco products, primarily through taxation, smoke-free policies, comprehensive advertising bans, and paid counter-advertising campaigns. And some researchers have found that offering incentives was far more effective in getting people to stop smoking than the traditional approach of giving free smoking cessation help, such as counseling or nicotine replacement therapy like gum medication or patches. So in short, adding financial incentives to get people to stop smoking has made a big difference.
Indeed. Well, without jumping into a whole other chapter of behavioral economics, Adele, the WHO argues that higher taxes are more cost-effective as a means to reducing tobacco use. We've had the same argument being made by Kelsey, but the data from Egypt is painting a completely different picture. Why is tobacco consumption still so high there?
Well, mainly it's expanding up until 2015, and the statistics only show a significant increase in tobacco use all over, whether it's cigarettes, it's shisha, or any other form. Even chewing tobacco in Egypt has become the third biggest consumption or the third biggest tobacco market in the country throughout just the past 2 years. So it's a significant increase, and also there's a major lack of information or statistical information in research. Because mainly when it comes to statistics, you find that about 38% of adults in Egypt are smoking cigarettes. It goes up to 50% of the male youth smoking in Egypt. And on the contrary, when you talk to younger generations, they don't say, and of course there's no official statistics in that regards. At the same time, and one of the main reasons that makes it very hard to confine or control it is because about 30% of the tobacco market in Egypt is based on smuggled tobacco, and many have been pointing fingers, including WHO officials here in Egypt, to tobacco industries, saying that they try to smuggle in tobacco illegally so that it would save them a lot of money, on the contrary from paying taxes. The government gets 70% of the entire tobacco price, or a cigarette pack price. And last year, for example, Egyptians consumed tobacco with an estimated of 18 billion pounds. So that's about 12.6% of revenues for the government. So it's a big source. We're talking about half the revenues of the Suez Canal.
Indeed. Kelsey, let's look at China, where more cigarettes are smoked than anywhere else on the planet. A new ban on indoor smoking went into effect in Beijing today. Now, the question a lot are asking in China, outside China as well, is will it work?
Well, that's right, and health activists have lobbied for years for stronger restrictions on smoking there. And this new ban on indoor smoking in Beijing, one of the world's most populous cities, is the latest measure to cut down on tobacco consumption. Now, it is not the first time smoking bans have been introduced. However, there are some differences this time around that suggest this ban could be more effective. Under the new rules, anyone who violates a ban on smoking in restaurants, hotels, schools, hospitals, and certain outdoor public places must pay a fine of the equivalent of about $32.25. That's 20 times the current penalty, which is seldom enforced anyway. The government is also hoping the public will take part by reporting smokers, and anyone who breaks the law 3 times will also be named and shamed on a government website, and businesses can be fined up to $1,600 for failing to stub out smoking on their premises.
Adele, let's get back to an argument you made a little earlier. Given the cash that the Egyptian government raises from tobacco taxes, isn't that just one big disincentive for it to put an effort into stamping out tobacco use? After all, it's a big beneficiary of taxes from that very same drug.
Well, definitely, Rama, and this is what many critics here have been pointing the fingers on the government, saying that the government says it wants to ban and limit tobacco use in Egypt, but on the contrary, they take no measures on the ground to implement even legislations that have been issued years ago. So, for example, it's illegal to smoke in public transportations, but when their public transportations have government employees on board, first of all, they would smoke on the transportation itself, and they would not ban any violating citizen who smokes on board. On the other hand, still at this point, it is legal for smokers to smoke within a confined public area, even it's behind closed doors. In clubs and public areas all over the country, there is no actual implementation of the limitation in smoking in public areas, with only exception in the Cairo International Airport, and that's not usually the case. So many have been saying that the government is trying to benefit from that revenue. On the contrary, it costs the government much more for healthcare to support smokers later on.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. As always, thank you very much for your input. That's Adel Mahuri live in the Egyptian capital of Cairo, and Kelsey Hubbard as well, live in New York, comparing experiences, of course, on regulating tobacco right across 4 different jurisdictions right across the world. Now, on to East Africa. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta says his government is committed to growing the consumption of made-in-Kenya products. Not a new story this, we've heard it before, but for starters, procurement rules are now going to be changed to require that 40% of all goods and services rendered to the government are locally sourced. The Kenyan government the Kenyan head of state was addressing the country's 52nd celebrations marking attainment of self-rule. So far, close to 8,500 companies have won government contracts after the government ring-fenced 30% of contracts for goods and services for young people, women and people with disabilities. The country is also working to make the business environment a lot more conducive to foreign investors.
To create the millions of jobs that we really need, my government is deliberately taking steps to attract foreign investment. For this reason, we have started a full campaign to make Kenya an irresistible investment destination, and we are making tremendous progress in bringing down the cost of doing business in Kenya. One of the most troublesome aspects of the cost of doing business is the cost of energy. Despite the shocks of a volatile global petroleum market, we are on course to extracting crude petroleum in various parts of our country. Our ambition has been to be a world leader in the generation of plentiful, cheap, clean, green and reliable electricity.
Now, before Ebola struck Liberia, its GDP this year was forecast to grow by over 6%. That forecast, we should point out, was made in June 2014. Now, in the wake of the outbreak of the disease, the worst outbreak on record, the World Bank reckons its output will grow by 3% this year at best. Now that the outbreak is over, however, authorities in Liberia are hoping to revive its tourism sector. Girum Chala takes up the story.
A beautiful view and potentially one of the best beaches in Africa. This is Monrovia, Liberia's capital. The nation neighbors the Atlantic Ocean from coast to coast. Now that the doom of Ebola is slowly behind, there are plans to initiate investment.
We have great investment potential in Liberia. And you know, during the Ebola crisis, everything was suspended. And now, after Liberia have been declared Ebola-free, investment activities have resumed. And we are very grateful. At least people can go back to work and people can resume normal activities. And this is what's going on.
Gorgeous sunsets, but very few here to enjoy them. The beaches are deserted with no visible tourist-friendly infrastructure. Even in general terms, Liberia does not have a vibrant tourism sector despite the potential.
It is an undeniable fact that the Atlantic Ocean gave Monrovia this breathtaking look. Now that the case of Ebola have dropped and freedom has been declared, the nation can now use this huge potential to attract as many tourists as possible.
Investment activities have resumed, and most of our international partners, we are calling them back those countries that have not come yet, we know that they're going to come. We just want to send this message that Liberia is Ebola free.
In town, tourist destinations like bars and hotels are now hotting up. This is an advantage for locals with small or big businesses.
Thank God that this is improving gradually. And after the Ebola crisis, we are all happy, very happy, thank God.
Analysts suggest Liberia should begin harnessing its natural resources to support its struggling economy. However, the challenge won't be easy. Grumtala CCTV, Monrovia.
Now, today, of course, being a holiday in Kenya, the Kenyan market isn't trading, but I thought I'd put some interesting numbers out there in relation to the earlier discussion we had around tobacco. Now, in the last decade, the NSE 20 is actually lower. It's down about 3 percentage points. NSE All Share, however, up 68.5%. But the one tobacco stock listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, BAT, in the last decade, that price has gone up by over 400%. Next, we'll be telling you how a group of young people is transforming urban squalor to green, clean and peaceful community spaces. And we'll be speaking to Mohamed Aboud Enain. He's one of Egypt's richest men, on how he stayed above the water despite losses incurred in Egypt's unrest.
Effects of the austerity measures are evident and were expected. Egyptians, however, seem to be patient about it. But El-Sisi told government he wants to control the prices promptly before people's patience runs out.
Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Global Business Africa. Dandora, right on the outskirts of the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, may be notorious for its high levels of youth unemployment and crime, but a community-driven project is helping to transform the lives of its impoverished young residents. Social innovation groups from around the world have actually been touring this project, which sees young people turn urban squalor into green, clean and peaceful courtyards. Community members pay small contributions, they employ young people to build and maintain the space. In return, they get access to an urban oasis. The tour group is part of an international conference organized by the Social Innovation Exchange and the Amani Institute. Its members have heard how this model is being replicated in other areas, potentially employing thousands of young people and breaking down employment barriers as well.
Guys from Dandora will go to seek jobs somewhere, and once they are noticed to be from Dandora, they lose their job immediately. So it was a bad place because almost all the youth engage in crime in one way or the other. All the girls in the community engage in prostitution, but few were left that try to keep their dignity high. So we were attacked. We had the problem of jobless, of youth did not have jobs around.
Over in North Africa, the Egyptian business tycoon Mohamed Enain has managed to ride out the economic and social upheaval in the wake of the nation's unrest sparked in January 2011. Now, the businessman is one of the top 5 richest in Egypt. He's got interests in heavy industry, tourism, real estate and media, with his group, Cleopatra Holdings, being one of the largest producers of ceramic tiles in the world. He spoke with Yasser Hakim about the near collapse of his empire following the political turmoil and the current challenges facing Egyptian enterprises.
I have been suffering a lot because these people, the Muslim brothers, would like to take the advantage of the revolution and take everything for themselves. So they try to push the workers to make strike. They try to get a lot of advantage from the business community, fearing them that they are going to make trouble, to make put in the jail, to make a false cause, and probably this cause can be in the jail for 2-3 years until he finished the judgment. I was keen to be very straight and very strong, and I have been suffering for 3 years. And I say no, I have nothing wrong, and I will not pay anybody.
Is working in politics
and media affected your business projects? Is there an effect by the media and politics on business?
Everything affects each other. I cannot say no. Because when you are in politics, you have your enemy, you have your people which support you. And when you have your media, of course, some people will support, some people against. It's all, this is life. But how to be trusting yourself, how to be clean, and nobody can talk about you when you are clean, when you are sure of yourself, when you don't make anything stupid or mistake. This is what it was my way. That's why after the revolution, after having the 25th of January, they tried to find anything about me, and they tried to control me, they tried to check all my past. They didn't find anything. That's why I'm here now.
Going back to business, we want to know your point of view of the economic challenges facing Egypt and the economic reform plans by the government.
Egypt has a lot of things to do. Really a very, very hard and very difficult and very strong challenge that has to be done. Legislation is number one. How to build state of law with a lot of new initiative for as legislative laws, new laws that can encourage the investors, Egyptian and Arabic and the foreigners. We need to see the new vision of Egypt, how to talk about the new vision and how to create this mega project in Egypt and how to distribute these projects among all the governors in Egypt. This is the new philosophy.
What's your feedback to the economic summit that took place in Sharm el-Sheikh recently? Now we're a couple of months after the summit. What are investors looking for to improve the environment of investments here?
And now if you compare the stability and security in Egypt today, I think it's completely different than 1 or 2 years ago. It's improving a lot. Now Egypt start to offer the foreign investors opportunities, which is the people study and see that is profitable. Why not? They start to come. So a lot of investors come from Arab countries, from Germany, Italian. Italy has been offering 1 billion euros for small industries to finance any Italian want to invest in Egypt. This is done. China has already a city in China, in Sokhna, beside my industrial park, has a big part, and the government get them 6 million square meters of land to make a complete Chinatown.
Quick run through commodity prices here for you. Oil, of course, is having an interesting moment. They're still trying to find direction. Keep a very close eye, of course, on two things: US data and the decision that comes out from OPEC. The expectation is that they will maintain production at their relatively high levels, of course, trying to batter American shale producers into submission. We'll be in a town in the Karoo, the world's ostrich capital, for lessons on how to stay profitable even amid turbulent times. Welcome back. If you're looking for a lesson in how to stay in business, the South African ostrich industry might be a good, if somewhat unorthodox, place to start. Angelo Coppola has spent time in the so-called ostrich capital of the world. Here for this report.
The South African ostriches generally get the H5N2 or H7N1 strains of avian flu, which, according to Klein Karoo International CEO Johan Stumpf, have never been transferred to humans. The first outbreak to hit South Africa was in 2006. It lasted 18 months. Just 2 years later, there was another outbreak, with no exports allowed. In 2011, everything changed.
At that stage, the exports were stopped of fresh meat to Europe, and we are still closed as of today. So it's more than 4 years later to export fresh meat to Europe.
The industry was in turmoil. Ostrich farmer numbers dropped from over 1,000 to less than 200. The European governments have stuck to their guns. In the meantime, the industry realized that they had to adapt or die.
Because we are focused on the export market for food safety and also for all our other products, these rules are usually forced on you by trade requirements, but also I think the farmers realize that they have to accommodate these rules within their farming practices to be sustainable in the long run.
The industry went the cradle to grave approach, from egg to processed product.
They followed very strict biosecurity guidelines, very strict traceability guidelines, movement, surveillance, monitoring for animal diseases, and these things I think gave us a very good standing on the international arena.
But the European market still won't allow raw ostrich meat to be imported. It was time to try a different approach. Pre-grill the ostrich meat, which kills any virus, and then seal it. But how do you sell pre-cooked meat to a consumer? It wasn't easy.
It took us about 3 years since we started, but this year we will export what we slaughter. So we're not in a situation where we can't sell all the meat anymore. And we will also sell this year for the first time again more meat in the European market than we sell in the local market fresh.
One of the saving graces during this time has been the weak rand dollar or euro dollar exchange rate.
But yeah, in the last 5 years, both the euro and the dollar, they have been very kind to us. And that's helped us also to go through this difficult time.
The industry has adapted itself to the requirements of its foreign markets, and from being close to near the end, with farmers leaving Ostrich in droves, it's now starting to make a comeback, and it looks like it's all good news. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV on the outskirts of Ostrich.
Right then, one more story here, a cautionary tale for that matter. A couple got more than they bargained for and they tried to take a selfie with an elephant. It's 2 tons of anger. What were you thinking? Anyway, it reached into their car and stole their handbag. And then the elephant then proceeded to devour the contents, fruits, debit cards, cash, the lot of it, leaving a heap of the tourist positions on the road. This was in Bandipur National Park in India. Eyewitnesses said a couple had been travelling along this scenic jungle road in the Indian state of Karnataka towards Uzi when they stumbled across the elephant and her calf. Bad idea. It's got a child. What were you thinking? Anyway, they stopped, tried to take a selfie with these lovely creatures in the background. The mother got ticked off, charged the tourists because the flash apparently was interpreted as a threat. Clearly not the smartest idea there. Right, quick run through the currencies here for you. We'll be keeping a very close eye on the cedi in Ghana. It's been having an absolutely torrid time, 408 to the dollar and weakening. The rate hike evidently not being taken seriously by the market, and the Kenyan shilling as well. June the 9th, that's when the MPC meeting takes place, and on top of that, remember, proper trading starts tomorrow. So we'll see how the market is priced in, or rather anticipates the MPC's actions later on tomorrow. Working on tomorrow's content, however, this is what we have in the pipeline. We'll be looking at new rules for children travelling in and out of South Africa. They kicked in on Monday. What effect will they have on the country's tourism? Also, we will be in Cape Town ahead of the World Economic Forum. That starts later in the week on Wednesday, but we'll have a preview of all the issues you need to worry about later on tomorrow. And that's it for this edition of the program. As always, we value your feedback, your thoughts, your ideas. Do send all of that to Global Business Africa at cctv.com. As always, when we're not on air, Facebook and Twitter are your ports of call. We'll see you over there, and in 23 hours, I'm Ramanya.